everybody stand and join me in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so this is the September 21st, 2017 meeting of the Philipstown Planning Board. We'll start with a roll call.
Anthony Moranti. Kim Connor.
Here.
Dennis Gagnon. David Hardy.
Here.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Neil Toman.
Here.
Neil Zuckerman.
Here.
Okay. So the first thing we want to do is approve the minutes from the August 17th meeting. Does anybody have any comments? Neil? Peter?
No.
David? No? So I have one comment, which is on page 2. And it's in the third paragraph where it says, Ms. Connor stated she had a question about the additional parking spaces. She reported that she's already seen people parking in the overflow parking and questioned if it was necessary to create more impervious surface there. So the there in this particular case doesn't refer to the overflow parking. It refers to the new parking that's behind the new building that they want to build. So I just wanted to clarify that. And that is everything from me. So tonight, the first thing we have on our agenda is a public hearing.
So we're going to.
Oh, sorry. We need to approve the minutes, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Okay. Thanks, Neil. So the first thing is the public hearing for Martin McHugh, 200 Lake Surprise Road in Cold Spring. Do you want to read that?
The Philipstown Planning Board for the Town of Philipstown, New York will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 21st, 2017, starting at 7:30 p.m. at the old VFW Hall, 34 Kemble Avenue in Cold Spring, New York, to consider the following application. Martin McHugh. The application represents a subdivision between the applicant and Martin McHugh, John McHugh, Patricia McHugh, Mary McHugh, and Hiroshi Miwa. The property is located on Lake Surprise Road. The property is situated in an RR Rural Residential Zoning District in the town of Philipstown, tax map number 27.1-29. At said hearing, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies of the application, plat map, and other related materials may be seen in the office of the Planning Board at the Philipstown Town Hall. Dated Philipstown, New York, this 30th day of August, 2017. Anthony Moranti, Chairman.
So, Mr. Watson, would you like to speak before?
Yes, Glennon Watson from Beatty and Watson for the applicants. We have two pieces of property, one owned by Mary McHugh and the other owned by Mary McHugh and her siblings. Mary McHugh owns about 8 acres. The siblings own together about 75 acres. They want to move the lot line, dividing their property so that Mary McHugh's land gets bigger. It moves from this line that's making her parcel a triangular parcel to something more of a rectangle. And when it's done, she will have 23 acres, almost 24, and they will have 51 remaining. There was a question as to the frontage. We went to the zoning board to seek relief on frontage for the large lot, which was already substandard, but it had a small bit of frontage right here next to Mary McHugh's lot, and we did get a variance to eliminate the requirement to keep that frontage. So we do have a reduction in the frontage. Other than that's a pretty simple lot line change. Try to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so does anyone from the board have questions? Neil?
Glenn, can you just state the why of your applicant? What is the reason for this lot line change?
The siblings own this 70-acre parcel because they inherited it from their mother in equal parts. All of the children, all of the siblings live out of town except for Mary McHugh, who lives here. She is desirous of taking her share of that property out of the land when the rest of the siblings want to sell the whole thing.
Understood. Got it. So then the lot line adjustment is exactly in proportion to her share of the existing, the sibling-owned lot. She's just taking her share out and moving it in, so the remaining siblings will then own the new lot?
It's
The reduced
roughly
lot?
there. I've never figured it. The remaining siblings will own the new lot, and I'm more than reasonably sure they're going to offer it for sale.
Okay. So one of the things we discussed last time was just that, this will get put up for sale and it'll be another lot with a non-conforming amount of frontage. Just want to note that that will happen. And that was in our minutes from last month. So no comments from, Ron, do you have any comments?
No, I have no technical comments. As the applicant indicates, you've seen the project before. He required a variance from the ZBA to permit you to consider the application. He's since obtained that, and obviously tonight's a public hearing. So recognizing that the application proposes no improvements, I'd actually drafted a draft negative secret declaration for your consideration, as well as a lot line adjustment approval resolution, which you have before you tonight if you wish to consider it.
Okay. And Steve, do you have any
No,
comments?
this is the second time this has been before you. You referred it to the zoning board for the necessary variance the first time around. They've got their variance, they're back, the plan hasn't changed a bit. I think the board's very familiar with this application, just here to hear public comment, and unless something changes, I expect you to be in a position to act on the two resolutions.
Okay. So is anyone here tonight who is here for this public hearing to speak? No. Okay. So given that there's no one here for the public hearing, I think we can entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Peter, second?
I'll second.
Neil? All in favor? Aye. So the next step would be to,
Consider the negative secret declaration first, and then consider action on the approval resolution.
so would anyone like to make a motion to make a neg deck? Neil, second, other Neil? Neil and Neil. All in favor? Aye. And secondly, no, we did that one, so what's this? The resolution. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Neil Toman, second. Peter Lewis, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so the next thing on our agenda is the return of escrow for Jeremy Sampson, 362 Old West Point Road. We have a letter from Mr. Sampson in which he requests the return of his escrow balance related to a application he had before the planning board. Ron, is there anything outstanding about this?
No, the project went through your review and approval process earlier this year. We haven't been asked to be involved in it ever since the approval, so certainly have no further invoicing from my office. So we'd have no objection to you releasing the escrow.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, I'm in the same position. We don't have any outstanding bills either, so if the board wants to vote to release the escrow, that's just fine.
So we'll entertain a motion to approve the return of escrow for Jeremy Sampson. Who'd like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
David, and second?
I'll second.
Peter. All in favor? Aye. I vote aye. Okay. So under old business, we have Index Industrial Design, 1602 Route 9 in Garrison. And Mr. Grasso, would you like to tell us anything about it?
Nothing's really changed.
Okay. It says here that you received the ZBA approval.
Yes.
And public hearing was held and closed at their July 20th meeting. And so we need to vote on seeker and resolution. Ron, do you have anything?
No, just as you indicate, you've been provided with draft resolutions for your consideration tonight.
Okay, does anyone on the board have anything to say? No? All right, and Steve, nothing from you?
Make a motion to adopt the resolution making a negative declaration under SECRA, and then once that's enacted, make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the site plan.
So first I'll ask for a motion to adopt the negative declaration under seeker.
I'll make that motion.
Peter, second?
I'll second.
Neil? All in favor? Aye. I vote aye. And second, need a motion to adopt the resolution for the amended site plan approval.
I'll make that motion.
Peter, and second? Second. David, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you very much. So the next thing on the agenda is Manitou Properties Company LLC, 1656 Route 9D in Cold Spring.
I'll recuse myself.
We had a public hearing at the August 17th meeting, and we'll need to vote on seeker and the resolution. So does anyone from the board have anything, any comments on this? No? I guess I'd like to ask Glenn to speak. I'd like to know about the parking. We discussed at the last meeting whether or not the parking that's behind the new building was necessary as more impervious surface, and you said you would get back to us about that.
To be perfectly frank, we haven't done anything about that. We need it for the staff, and that, I believe that was in the calculations.
So you didn't take a look at it then?
I didn't really look at it, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ron, do you have?
Oh, again, we have draft resolution for your consideration. If there's an issue or a concern you have over parking, you might want to identify that as a further condition, add a condition to that approval reso that's before you, for the applicant to respond to.
We can work that out with Ron. If we can get rid of the space, we'll be happy to do it.
Okay. It just seems to me that, given the proximity to the houses and things like that, that since there is adequate, it seems, overflow parking, it might be preferable to not have yet another piece of parking.
That'd be fine.
How do you feel about that, Neil? Peter? David? Yeah. So we would add that as a condition then, Ron?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's easy enough for you.
Yeah, it's easy enough to figure it out.
Can't do it with Mr. Zuckerman recusing himself, do we still have the requisite number of people?
Oh, that's a good
to do what
Yes.
we have to do? We're
You have
still-
4.
we're still-
You need 4. You have 4.
Okay. Okay. Steve, do you have anything?
No,
Okay.
you would adopt, just as the last one, first a resolution adopting a negative declaration under SECRA, and then you would adopt a resolution granting site plan approval as amended, because you have an amendment to that resolution that was prepared.
Okay.
So we're going to add a provision regarding the parking into the approval resolution.
And that would go in the amended site
In the
piece?
conditions, yeah.
Conditions.
Inserted before the chairman signs.
Okay. So we can make a motion to adopt a neg deck without the conditions first.
Right.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to adopt the neg deck under seeker.
So moved.
David, second.
Second.
Peter, all in favor? Aye. Okay, and then secondly, take a resolution to adopt the amended site plan approval with the conditions related to the additional parking behind the new building.
I'll make that motion.
Neil, and second?
Second.
David, all in favor? I vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, something that isn't on our agenda tonight, but which I'd like to discuss is a referral that we had from the ZBA related to a project known as Essex Green on Douglas Lane, property designation 49.6-2-14. And I'd like to ask Steve Gaba to explain what our obligation is here, if
Sure.
possible.
The board's received a letter from the zoning board, and it purports to be a reference of the Essex Green application, reference to this board for review and comment, under Town Code 175-59 sub 3. Town Code 179-59 sub 3 provides, "The Secretary of the Zoning Board of Appeals shall refer all applications for use variances to the planning board for a report prior to the public hearing. If the planning board does not report within 30 days of such referral, the zoning board of appeals may take action without the planning board's report." The Essex Green application is for an area variance, not for a use variance, as a result of which there really shouldn't have been a referral to the zoning board on this application. However, okay, there's a however. 175-59 sub 4 says, "At least 5 days prior to the date of the hearing of appeals," doesn't say use or area variance, it just says appeals, "the zoning board of appeals shall publish notice of such hearing in the official newspaper, mail notice thereof to the planning board, simultaneously with the appeal being placed on the zoning board agenda, and send notice by first-class mail to all property owners within 500 feet. Because 175-59 sub 4 doesn't distinguish between use and area variances, it could be, and I'd suggest it has to be, read as providing that the zoning board has to send notice of public hearings to the planning board prior to holding a planning board. It's something we've never done before, quite frankly, not at least in my experience. So the question arises as to what the planning board is supposed to do with the notices that it receives from the zoning board. You can't read the code as making the zoning board do a pointless act, sending it to the planning board just for its information. So I read this second section, it's not the one that it was sent over, but it would still apply, as giving the planning board discretion to make a voluntary comment on applications to the zoning board if so inclined. You don't have an obligation to do anything when they make that referral to you. If it was a use variance, you have an obligation to provide a report to them within 30 days, and if you don't, they can act anyway. But if it's an area variance, you're going to get this notice, and it's up to you what you're going to do with it. If it's an area variance for something that's up for site plan or subdivision approval, it's probably appropriate that you weigh in one way or another. You might have weighed in already if you did a referral to them to begin with, but perhaps something a little bit more detailed, well, in the event that it was an area variance for an application that involved site plan or subdivision approval. But if there is an application that doesn't, and you feel it presents some special, unusual, unique issue, I'd say it still would be appropriate for you to weigh in. I don't know that you want to weigh in on every garden variety, deck and fence and outbuilding that's getting a side yard variance or rear yard variance, but if it's something unusual, you might want to weigh in. And I think that brings us full circle to your concern, Kim, regarding this application, and maybe you want to share with the board what your thoughts are on that.
Okay. So what this is this is someone who wanted to build a house in Nelsonville Nelsonville didn't like the way that it didn't follow Nelsonville's zoning. And it's two lots where one lot is in Philipstown and one lot is in Nelsonville. And so what they want to do is move the entire house into the Philipstown parcel with a 0 lot line in the front yard. And with half, basically 50%, 52% and 51% rear yard setbacks. And what I read in here, so I asked Steve about this, and he says that the building inspector has decided this is a legal lot for Philipstown. It's very small. And the applicant is claiming that the reason it's a legal lot is because, and I'm going to read this from their document. This is an August 31st, 2017 letter from Zarin and Steinmetz to Robert D., who's the chairman of the zoning board. It says here, the original history of the property and the project. The original parcel from which the property was subdivided was created in 1908. The original parcel was thereafter divided several times. Of relevance to the instant application, in 1966, approximately 1 acre of the original parcel, which I take to mean not this parcel that we're talking about, was conveyed to the village of Cold Spring in order to allow for a connection to the Catskill Aqueduct. The town had already enacted its first zoning law by this time, which specifically exempted reductions in the area of parcels where the land was taken for a public purpose. Although Cold Spring never used that parcel for a connection to the aqueduct, Cold Spring obviously acquired that parcel in furtherance of a public purpose. Consequently, the subject property was legally created, though it no longer complies with the currently applicable minimum lot size for the subject town RC zoning district. So the way I read this, that doesn't follow, right? Whatever parcel the 1 acre was taken from, it seems to me, would be the parcel that would be exempt from zoning requirements, not one of several parcels subdivided from the original property between 1908 and 1966. So I'm not sure that this actually gets to be a legal lot under the rules that it's claiming. But I'm not sure that that's our decision to make.
Well, the way that it works with non-conforming lots is that initially an application of one kind or another, it could be depending on the land use approval sought, goes to the building inspector. And the building inspector makes a determination on the issues as to what variances are needed. And unless somebody challenges the building inspector's decision, the building inspector's decision stands. Now here, the applicant has applied and the building inspector has, and I've not seen anything in writing, this is just what I've been told, so I don't know this for a fact, but I'm told that he's determined that this is a legal conforming lot. And the appeal's gone forward for variances on the lot in the town of Philipstown. That application has now come before this board by way of reference. You do not get a chance to make a ruling on it. You can, however, comment to the zoning board, and I think the argument, the observation I should say, that Kim makes is certainly on its face plausible, may even be valid. It may be that this is not, in fact, a legal non-conforming lot. And if the board so desires, I can prepare a letter to the zoning board with this board's comments on the referral, being that you question the determination that it was a legal conforming lot, and it's something that the zoning board should look into. Understand that the zoning board can't, on its own, overturn a determination of the building inspector. They could ask him for advice, but they can't appeal his decision as such. So I don't know that at the end of the day, your comment on that is going to have any legal impact. But if it's something that you're concerned about and you'd like to voice that to the zoning board, it's certainly within your purview to have a letter sent to them saying, we looked at this issue, our comment is that we have concerns about whether this is in fact a legal non-conforming lot.
So, if
if the inspector, trumps our board and their board, then how's that gonna work? How are they gonna get through it? Do you understand my question?
Well, the building inspector doesn't trump the zoning board. The zoning board, in order to have its jurisdiction invoked, needs somebody to question the building inspector's determination. There
Right.
has to be an application or an appeal or something to it in order for it to rule on the issue. It's an appellate board. It cannot rule except upon the issues that are before it. This board really doesn't have anything to do with the building inspector as such. Your decisions are really kind of
Right.
separate from his. I
Yeah.
mean, you decide how the plans are going to go. He'll go and look at them and make sure they're built in accordance with the plans that you do. But he doesn't trump whatever you decide is appropriate site plan,
No, but so the applicant
permit,
has to go to the other board and get a determination, right?
Well,
Go
or
to
a
the-
neighbor, or, as I mentioned to Kim earlier, the town board has the ability to seek an advisory opinion from the zoning board. There's a lot of different ways that you can get from the building inspector to the zoning board. This board is just not one of those ways. The planning board can't appeal from determination of building inspector.
And our concern is just that things that is to not set precedent for non-conforming things, that there's a reason that we have setbacks, right? And that when you want relief from setbacks, it should be because, it seems to me that it should be because there's a reasonable, reason to have that exemption. But when you're looking at a lot that, is already it just seems to me that a lot that's too small for Nelsonville, and, in a place where there's septic and, that to want to build a 4-bedroom house in a place where you're already just sort of straining the edges of things, it just warrants a look, and it seems like a precedent that we don't necessarily want to follow. Anybody else? Okay. So, do we want to write an opinion? Do we want to ask Steve to write us an opinion to send to the zoning board?
Right up what you just addressed. Send that to the zoning board and then let the zoning board
Do with it as
deal
it will.
with it, yeah.
You need a motion in a second.
Okay, so we'll take a motion to ask Steve.
Send like the board's comments letter, exactly.
To make it an advisory letter to the zoning board, okay.
Second?
Second that.
Peter.
So now we've moved it. What are we actually going to be writing in this memo? Because I actually didn't catch exactly what our opinion is from, can you just state, do you know what you're being asked to write?
Yeah, there's two issues here. The first issue is that they claim, as I understand the argument as presented in the referral letter, that it's a legal non-conforming lot because the Village of Cold Spring took 1 acre from what appears to be a sister lot for purposes of connecting to the Catskill Aqueduct, and that there's supposed to be a provision in the town's code which says that if that happens and a lot results in being undersized because of the taking, then it's considered a legal non-conforming lot. And the other issue is that they say that the lots were formed in 1908 and predate the town's zoning. But they appear to be looking for the change here based on a lot which doesn't have anything to do with the taking in Cold Spring.
What I've heard Kim describe as the issue has nothing to do with any of that. What I've heard is the lot would have no setbacks if it was to.
Nothing to do with being pre-existing
I
non-conforming.
understand,
That's
but
what
I
they're
think-
seeking the variances for.
But isn't that that's your issue you've raised, I thought,
Well,
was
that's the other issue. The other issue is we don't want to set a precedent on variances like this.
Can I add something to this? I am representing, along with Aaron Stein's applicants.
Speak in the microphone.
The question of setbacks, the building inspector has determined that the front yard setback is measured to the village-town line, the village line. It's not the town line, it's the village line. when she originally approached Nelsonville, she wanted to put this house straddling the line, and that was a problem in terms of valuation and in terms of assessment. And there was a question as to whether or not it was a legal building lot in Nelsonville. There was 2 acres. I don't remember the numbers exactly. Prior to any zoning, there was a 2-acre piece created. The Myers property was sold off out of the estate. The rest of the estate is on the other side of the aqueduct. So what created the parent parcel was really the aqueduct, which severed about 10 acres, maybe 15 acres from the overall estate. Part of that 15 acres was in Nelsonville, and part of it wasn't. When the Myers bought in the late 50s, early 60s, there was no zoning in Nelsonville. They brought only land in Nelsonville, and they left a 2-acre piece that straddled the line, partly in Nelsonville, part not in Nelsonville. So that was a 2-acre parcel. The Village of Cold Spring acquired one of those 2 acres. What Essex Green owns is 1 parcel of land, not 2. They do have 2 tax map IDs because they split the land on the municipal boundary in order to apportion the value of the property. But we're not dealing with 2 pieces of property. We're dealing with this 1 acre, 1+ acre leftover piece, of which a small part is in Philipstown and a small part is in Nelsonville, and I don't remember which one's larger. The setback from the front of the house, as the building inspector has determined to be the front yard setback, is he says it has to be measured from the front of the house to the village line. But between the village line and the driveway that's on this piece of property, there's another 50 feet. So there's no question about this purpose of a setback is usually, in my background, purpose of setbacks is to provide a pleasing appearance and that sort of thing. It's not, it might be different in the village. You can have 0 lot lines, but so anyway, between the house and the actual property line is probably at least 50 feet. I don't remember. The back line is pretty close. They're asking for a variance to the back line. That's against the aqueduct. But you got the aqueduct and you got a couple hundred feet before you get to the next piece of property and another place where somebody else, a private owner, owns it. So that's what I can tell you about that. I hope I've made it a little more clear.
I don't understand how there's a 0 front yard setback in their document, and you're saying it's not.
Because the building inspector said you have to measure the front yard setback to the municipal boundary.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to the street line or to the property line that's in front of that's actually in front of the house. The distance between
The government line between Nelsonville and Philipstown is in between the front of the house and the village line, is what you're saying?
What you need to understand is that for purposes of zoning, when you have land that straddles a municipal boundary, and you're looking for a land use approval in one of the 2 municipalities, the municipality in which the building is going to take place does not count any of the land in the other municipality against the bulk requirements. So if you have a 2-acre lot and you have a municipal boundary line cutting it in half so that there's 1 acre in each municipality, the municipality, well, really both municipalities should, but municipality in which the building is going to take place looks at it as being only a 1-acre lot, even though the deed provides that it's 2 acres. And it looks at the setbacks as being from that 1-acre line, the boundaries of the lot plus the municipal boundary. It pays no attention to anything in the other municipality. That's a separate issue, though, from whether this was a legal non-conforming lot from the beginning.
That's a different issue. You weren't getting the picture. I understood you.
I appreciate you clarifying.
I just didn't get the picture.
that's what the board's letter would be on, just the issue of have they demonstrated this is a legal non-conforming lot or not? And like I say, it's not for this board to weigh in on that one way or the other. They can raise the issue and questions, but they're not going to.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain it.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so when this goes into the record, it's not going to go into the record as the ZBA, the ZBA is going to grant a variance for the zero lot line? Is that what's going to happen? Zero setback, I mean, no, if they, no, if they do, but that's what they, and would there be, is there like a note in there saying why that is, or does it just, you know, so that in 10 years, when somebody looks at this and they say, hey, the board's decided it was okay to have a zero, setback.
The way the process works for an area variance, there
I
are,
understand how it works. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if there's some way to, ask a note to be taken that that there's a legal reason for this having to do with municipalities and.
If you've ever seen a town of Philipstown zoning board of appeals decision, they read like a book. Believe me, it'll be in there in spades.
Okay. Just for clarity, so that in future, if somebody looks and.
You can really go
yeah.
back historically. They're a little bit of a beast to write, but they've got everything in there.
Okay. Okay, so we can step back then, I think, to questioning whether this is a legally non-conforming lot.
If the board.
If we would like to make that.
If you don't, then I won't.
Right, so should we take a vote on whether or not we want to do that?
I think you had a motion in a second.
We had a motion in a second, but now we have new information, so
Okay.
first,
If you want to do it again, that's fine.
so does anyone want to make that motion?
With the new information that we
Yes.
received. I'll make that motion.
A second? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
I'll circulate a draft. If anybody has comments, just refer back to me.
Thank you.
it seemed like you didn't have a majority.
We didn't?
I only heard two people vote.
I thought everybody voted, no?
Should we do it again?
Why don't you do a roll call vote?
We'll do a roll call vote. Neil
To be
Zuckerman.
honest, I actually don't know what we're voting on, except this, honestly, I'm happy to not stand in the way. I'm actually not sure what the text of what we're gonna say is trying to say, so it's hard, honestly, I'm hard for me to vote on this. I'm not a no, but I'm like a quizzical, which I guess would be, so
I'm
we're,
having the same problem as you.
okay,
I
so,
don't quite get,
The letter would read essentially like this, and this is just a rough composition of it as far as that goes. At its meeting on October 21,
oh,
2000.
no, Dan. I was kidding, keep going. Keep going. That was good, sir.
I was going to get out of this meeting so quickly, too.
Keep going. Sorry.
I know. Anyway, on October 21, 2017, the planning board of the town of Philipstown considered the referral letter from the zoning board of appeals regarding the, whatever it is. The Essex Green application. The board voted to make the following comments in regard to the said referral. One, the board was concerned about paragraph of the letter indicating that this was legal non-conforming lot based upon the claim that 1 acre had been taken by the Village of Cold Spring for purposes of establishing a connection to the Catskill Aqueduct. The board suggests that the Zoning Board of Appeal look into this issue and whether in fact it is a legal non-conforming lot. Two, the board is concerned about the potential impact of precedents of granting zero lot line changes and recommends that any determination by the board granting the requested variance note the reasons therefore, particularly the separation of the lot by a municipal boundary. So basically it'd be that, 2 paragraphs, just noting what the issues are, raising them to the zoning board, and then just saying that's our only comments on it.
Okay, so Neil.
Yes.
Neil.
Yes.
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 Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody. So with that, I think we are.
I don't want this to come to a as a surprise to you. We will be talking to you next month about Hudson Highlands Reserve. However, we are making arrangements to remove the trees from the dam as a maintenance process, regardless of whether the application goes through, because, as you may recall, I may have mentioned this before, Mr. Kingsley recommended that that be done to prevent some damage. We're intending to do that in November. I informed the Conservation Board at its meeting a week or so ago. It's done under the maintenance exemption, and the Conservation Board asked us not to do it until after November 1st, which we will not do until after November 1st. Told us we did not need a permit because we're exempt under the maintenance exemption that's provided in the wetlands law. And so we're planning to do that in November so that that will be taken care of regardless of whether the subdivision is ultimately approved. I just wanted to let you heard it here first is what I wanted to happen.
Could I
Can
ask why November?
The bats, the bats roosting and nesting stuff.
And that's a Class A dam?
I think so. I should know because I've been writing about it.
It's kind
all
of
week.
important because it's you know, if it's
Yeah,
an A, I have no problem with it. If
it's-
it's a B, we really should have more,
I believe it's a Class A. I'll double check though.
right, please.
What's the distinction there?
They're hazard categories laid out by the DEC for dam
Oh,
classifications.
I remember that now.
So they have, and
So this
there's
is a hazardous
a class A is
situation.
essentially a maintenance-free dam aside from this.
I know that
If it's-
in 2015.
Right, and if it's a Class B, it triggers an Article 15 procedure with the DEC. So that's a different thing. So that's why it's important for us to know if it's a Class A or Class B. Class A is a very casual sort of maintenance, low maintenance plan. Class B is not. So it'd be good to have that in writing someplace before they do anything, just for your own. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So there is one more thing, sorry. And that is that when I went to the town board meeting at the beginning of the month, I asked, they were presenting the new open space index, which we are supposed to consider whenever we are looking at parcels. We're supposed to consider whether or not they're on the open space index. So I asked the town board to give us all a copy of this revised open space index, and I also asked for maps, because this is not adequate, as you can see. So Michelle Smith from the Land Trust offered to supply us with some maps, and I will follow up on that. I just wanted to let all of you know, since they're the ones who produced them. But this is a really important document, and we should be considering it whenever we make our determinations. So, and I think that's that. Anybody have anything else? No? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.